Okay, I think we've got enough folks that we can get started here. I'm going to share my screen just on the meeting minutes. Let's see. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another fabulous edition of the DataOps Initiative. We have our friendly faces here. And Kiara is joining us, which I'm very excited about. She's been to a few of our previous meetings, and she always has some really awesome things to say. So today I figured that we would go for some really light sort of updates and announcements if there's any, but actually spend most of the time doing a birds of a feather type discussion. I put a link in the meeting minutes here, and I'm also going to paste it in the chat. Let me make sure I get the chat open. Um, and this is just like a little spreadsheet of some of the announcements that were made. There's a lot of different things, and I feel like even just any single one of those we can spend some time talking about. But I'm really excited. And then the birds of a feather that we're going to do, the meeting after the next is going to be facilitated by Victor on Meta Stores. And so I think that it will be incredibly exciting either way. So yeah, usually I would want to run introductions, but I think we're okay if people are okay with doing that. Okay, fantastic. So let's go over some of the top level agenda items. Um, so the first is that Victor has come up with a potential curriculum. So we initially had a curriculum on the website that was like pretty like I think based around this idea of what data ops could be broken down into in terms of domains, but it didn't really target some of the things that would actually go into some of that if we were to make it a certification. And so Victor has very kindly put this together for us. And some of it is like, pretty open and subject to like some changes, but generally speaking, I think that one of the things that it does really well is focus on the different levels of data ops practitioners that we have here. So, Victor, do you want to do like a really quick overview of this before we get into it?
Yeah, this is a really, really generic list, automatically generated. So, but I'm not sure we need so many levels.
Yeah.
But just because some of the certification need, per data ops, we might just need one because that's because I took the three Kubernetes certifications, CKA, CKAD, and CKS. So those are hands-on. This one probably is not hands-on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say probably maximum level 2 level, but this is just given an idea of where we can start from and probably combine some of them into fewer levels. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is a good idea, partially because oftentimes when we build courses, and this is something that like education does quite a bit as like the study of pedagogy, is creating like learning personas, right? Like who coming in has what kind of idea of base knowledge and who is the ideal person for this. And I think some of this that we tried to conceptualize around before was like, is this a DevOps engineer coming into the data engineering world? And is that sort of a baseline? So are they familiar with the concepts of CI/CD, but not necessarily, database version control, maybe is one of these ideas. Um, the second is, the inverse of that is somebody, relatively strong at data pipelining, but doesn't necessarily understand, the concept of GitOps, for instance. And so that's kind of how I conceptualized some of these before, but generally speaking, I do think that it's not as satisfactory as thinking, okay, who understands nothing? And then the subsequent person after that kind of has to build upon that. And I think the latter is a little bit more of a, I would say, certification friendly way, because then you can have the levels of advancement versus just like which end of the spectrum are you coming from and then which way you're coming back. I don't know if you agree with that, but I kind of want to hear some thoughts around what you guys imagine the type of person who would want to take a data ops certification is. Mm.
Based on experience, this would be individuals. These sitting at the intersection of data engineering and DevOps. So for them, they either already have to have had background in data engineering, or they should have a stronghold either in one of the places, because DataOps is uh, it's a amalgamation of both those concepts and principles, allowing people to then provide the best of both the worlds to companies. And for level 3 or something like that, where we're talking about AI and ML, if they have had experience with building algorithms or working and deploying machine learning models, I think even that will come in very handy.
Yeah. Yeah, Dan made similar comments in the chat. Who understands nothing, Jon Snow. It wouldn't be a data ops meeting without a nerd reference. People only know ML, AI, and data science in general. Guys already in the data science would be into this. Most of them want to build dashboards. I kind of agree with that, where we might have actually some more like analytics engineers, users that come into this vein than like maybe even a traditional data engineer from what we would understand. Um, that's kind of one of the issues, is that this is such a gray area that it can encompass anything, but I I still run away from data engineering whenever I can. Yeah, I think Vivek has a really strong point, though, in that maybe the idea here is not necessarily to work from the novice and then build upon each one of those, but even to, and I think, Victor kind of mentioned this, or somebody, or actually it was Jesse who mentioned this to me, was working from what a certification exam would look like and then working backwards, or looking at what an advanced level certification would look like and then kind of scaffolding as you move backwards. Like if I called myself a data ops engineer, what would I expect this person to know? And then build some of that information around it. And if it's too advanced, then like stripping it back and then doing the like precursor course to this, so that you like explain some of those basic concepts.
I
Um,
added 2 courses onto our webpage that
yeah,
do have basics. So data and AI fundamentals and ethics in AI and data science. So we should look at what these do, and then we don't have to repeat that. And also I emailed the Linux Foundation and I asked them to walk me through their process and what their requirements are. And so when I know those, I can share them and we can also work from
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. I think this
They
is a
might
good.
have ideas as well. I don't know.
Agreed, agreed. And they'll probably have a better idea of who currently is interested in taking those certifications in general, right? And like what companies are willing to sponsor those sort of certification programs, and pay for them as well. Because I think like we want people to take the certification and have the support from their companies. Yeah. Yeah, find the companies that actually need the data ops and ask them like what kind of training would their engineers be interested in. I think
Right.
that's a really good idea, actually. Awesome. I think that's enough to kind of table some of this discussion for now as we kind of sit and chew on these things. Um, yeah. Yeah, I agree with Dan. He mentions that uh, we have to find the companies that actually need data ops, and typically these are like larger businesses with like relatively large data needs, so not necessarily SMBs. Uh, and then and so some of these companies are like really large operational companies as well. Like and when I think about data ops, and at least from what I've seen as sort of the thought leaders in the space, it's like companies like Uber, companies like Netflix, things like that. Hey, Victor. Feel free
Yeah,
to.
probably we can reach out to Linux Foundation and find out which one, because I imagine this is also going to be kind of revenue generating opportunity for Linux Foundation, right? So
Yeah.
probably if good to find out like which exams are the one that's most kind of profitable for Linux Foundation, other than the hands-on one. I really like the hands-on ones, the 3 ones, but
Mhm.
I think there are not many hands-on exams. And this one it would be hard to make it hands-on. So most likely it won't be. So for those that's not hands-on, which one are taken most, probably we can use those information to decide what kind of content will most likely people like and actually learn about and take exam for.
I actually think that there are some possible hands-on components to have in a certification like this. I think that it would be opinionated in terms of tooling, though. So an example is like providing a pre-existing data pipeline and then asking, you know, I guess like asking like perhaps the user or the exam taker to like generate like a Docker file that contains all of those components, for instance, and then like actually include some database components as well, and then deploy that, for instance, or create some like unit tests around like perhaps a certain framework. I think that's kind of the easier way instead of asking them to build like a data architecture from the ground up. But the truth is like a lot of these tools are quite opinionated that try and do this. And that's kind of the caveat here. So we're a little bit too early, but also a little bit too not like mature enough in the field. Kiara and Dan mentioned some vertical industries that would be really good. So such as finance, insurance, healthcare, as well as, yeah, Dan says the hands-on must be there, theory sucks. I kind of agree with this. Just because I feel like people tend to cheat their way through theory a lot. And I think the hands-on parts of the certification are what makes them really attractive. Yeah. We can learn a little bit more from Dr. Andrew Ng from Deep Learning AI. I think Zach Wilson also does like certification programs like these, so we can take a look at some of these as well. As systems thinking design to make the exams more tool agnostic. I agree. I think that the systems level design and the architecture design is quite important for these sort of things. Yeah, the only thing is that a lot of the times answers for system design, at least for somebody who's done like a decent amount of system design interviews at this point, is that they're very open-ended, so it's hard to standardize answers and score sometimes between tests. So we would probably need to figure out a way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
as
really
far,
like, yeah.
I'm sorry, I did not find the hand raising button here. Sorry, so I had to reset. Yeah, where is it gone? Okay, so, oh, sorry, I was having dinner, so while I was listening to you, so I became a keyboard warrior for that moment. So I wanted to add something here. Uh, Now, as far as certification goes, we need I think we would need some sort of survey in that sense that how many companies are there that actually are working with huge amount of data and who would actually want their people to buy that stuff. Second thing is the educational institutes. So a lot of people uh, who would start bachelor's degree in computer science or data science, maybe they would want to go there and that would be targeted, but I think on an institutional level where on a university level, wherever we can, that is where we want to go on with that. Regarding the hands-on thing, I think that certification needs to be like a boot camp of sorts, that once you're done with that, at least you're able to do basic tasks. If you ever want to design any course, I have a lot of courses designed myself and I've done all of that. So the way I would go about it is to start with, I think it was Kira who said about system thinking, and I really like the point, and that is exactly my point as well. You start from a higher level understanding. At least you need to know how each of these modules or each of these elements interact with each other, and why are you going into that? Because if you start directly from bottom up, that tends to get very boring and you don't get the bigger picture. You start with the bigger picture. That is system thinking, that is system design, that is problem solving, and then you go downwards. So, for example, if I want to teach someone Linux, instead of directly starting with file management, using cd and mv, cp, and these commands, make sense. But if you start off with what is Linux, how it evolved, and how did it, why, like initially it was only for servers and client, and then it came into desktop. How does the Unix architecture work? And once you understand that, you automatically become distro and flavor agnostic in Linux environment. That is if you want to take DataOps in that sense. And somebody did mention tool agnosticism. You need to know one tool. For example, if I am teaching Linux, I would teach them how to use Ubuntu, but my concepts would be around how Unix architecture what Linus actually brought into this and everything, and how does that work? If you understand that, then if you give me a CentOS system of Fedora, or you give me anything, I can easily work on that. Although I've started with Kali and I'm right now on Linux Mint, then I shifted to Ubuntu and I'm shifting again on Fedora. I can shift that because I know the basic architecture, I know the system working, and
Mhm.
then learning the hands-on part, that is Bash, and all of that stuff becomes easier.
Mhm.
So if you're approaching this with that, so that is a very standard thing, that okay, introduction, philosophy, all of that, okay, you get that. But in terms of the architectural thinking, that if I want to build data ops pipeline, what are the elements, how would they interact with each other, what are the common problems on a higher level, and then we go on, okay, how do you set up your GitOps, okay, how do you set up data cleaning, you can set up notebooks around that, and then you can go one by one. Notebooks are some of the best way to go on that. If you don't want to focus too much on programming language, a simple notebook with Python, that is good enough, and most of the data ops would be running around Python. I don't foresee any other language around that, or R. We can go around that. So that if we want to approach this, that would be the way I would go around that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think those are really good points. And I actually really like that idea, because what we're trying to, like, yes, having a certification that's easy to score and is like, you know, you can get points off of, or like can sell, like, yes, that's nice. But what I really see as our goal in terms of like this specific initiative and why like all of us are here is to generate critical thinkers in this space, right? And to generate
Yep.
people that can go from company to company and immediately improve that architecture based off of, you know, very like first basic principles, and then really understand how to apply these to a system. And there's like a translation there that I think is really difficult, but if it's been done before, and I think that it has been done before a few times, we can really start looking into that and applying from the systems level then to the implementation and hands-on as we kind of drill down and work into that. That way we can be more tool agnostic. I think even now, things like languages are quite hard to want to test on, especially because it's like, well, like what if somebody wants to use Go, but what if somebody else wants to use Java? Like I think any of those tools are actually quite valid in this space too, right? Yeah, I think Kira has also mentioned that this line of thought came from her experience with the AWS data engineering exam, heavily skewed towards data architecture and use cases. Okay, that's awesome. Kira, I'd love for you to be part of this process with us for sure. Because I think that this idea is really useful, is that like sending people all of these different use cases and all of these different architectures and having them drill down and flesh out and then taking out those basics. Yeah, I really like this idea. Victor, is this like a shift that's comfortable with you as somebody who's kind of like bringing this paperwork onto this process? And we're kind of changing it into another direction, but I'm happy that this conversation is happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I think it definitely doing exam, I mean, hands-on exam will be better. I agree. It's just harder. So I welcome all kinds of contributions, and definitely love to work together on that.
Yeah. I'm gonna put this link in the chat. I think Victor is the one that owns it, so but we can move it to the drive. I think my other link also needs to be moved to the drive as well. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'm gonna think on this a little bit and try and create sort of a roadmap for this certification, but also some ideas by looking at the AWS data engineering certification, because I think that's a really good like certification just to go off of in terms of baseline. I don't necessarily know if the pre-existing LF certifications are going to be really strong baselines for what we want in this case. And then work backwards and see how we can merge some of those worlds together.
I mean, there was a DevOps bootcamp. They renamed it, but it's basically DevOps bootcamp, and like there's the GitOps certification. It did pretty well when we launched it, so there are things we can look at for sure. But
Yeah.
let's see what they say.
Yeah.
And I might have a call with them and ask them all those questions you had. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much, Roxanne, for again, doing everything for this initiative. We really appreciate you.
Team effort.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I do want to move on to any other discussions. So, I don't know who added this. I'm guessing it was Roxanne who put CDCon thoughts and takeaways to this. I think so. Recently, Open Source Summit North America happened, and just before I move on, I just wanted to open the floor to anybody who wanted to throw in some last minute comments before we move on, because I think that we're on a really good line of thought, and I feel bad kind of breaking some of the momentum there, but oh, we're all good. Okay. You do always have the chat. Yeah, I think we could go for hours for sure talking about this stuff. So CDCon happened, I think it was last week in Denver at Open Source Summit North America. And one of the things that I noticed was, at least for us, all of the AI talks that happened were incredibly popular. Like eBay did a talk on some of their AI, ML, and CI/CD infrastructure, and anything that involved the intersection of DevOps, as well as AI was like, it was like a packed room. It was not even a contest. Same thing with, I can't remember which company presented this. I think it was a finance company or bank, but it was like, your deployments are lying, AI knows. That was also a really popular talk as well. And so I think that there's a lot of hunger around this particular field, which also we got some recognition as the DataOps initiative, kind of from the larger, foundation and things like that. I may or may not have won a small award. I hate saying that because I feel like it's so egotistical, but generally speaking, a lot of show off. Yeah. As if pasting my my face everywhere wasn't enough. But generally speaking, I think that there's a lot of hunger in this space right now, and we're in the right place. Like I want to start bringing some of those talks in to what we're doing here at the DataOps initiative, and people became much more aware of us too. But yeah, that's funny. Awesome. So I do want to make sure that we're going to continue that momentum moving forward, and that we're able to get a larger talk next year is my idea. But yeah, if anybody is interested, I think Kiara is now the CDF ambassador. And because I forgot to reply, I think that Kiara is going to be our next award winner for next year. So we're gonna all vote for her next year. Awesome. All right. So next piece of stuff that I have, I think, Roxanne, is there any other specific questions you wanted around CDCon for me to answer? Nope.
No, I was just curious about your thoughts, and yeah, that was
I think that's good. One thing I want to look into next year is we should have like a logo or a sticker or something fun, so that we can show off some stuff, and we can all be matching, and people who sign up for this initiative, and merchandise, so we can all go around with like what is it, like Patagonia vest with a tiny little DataOps logo on the side or something like that.
If you want to make stickers, we can probably swing that on Sticker Mule and ship them to you, and then
Yeah, stickers sound like a good first edition. So if anybody wants to take their crack at AI generating a copyright infringed sticker design, please feel free to, or use MS Paint. Nothing wrong with the OGs. Yeah, Dan wants to deck the family out for their family birthday trip. That's funny. I love it. Fantastic. So the next piece that I have here is the conference announcement. So everybody should be able to have access to this. And judging from how many people are here, we do. So this is going to be what we're spending the next 30 minutes doing. We're just talking about the announcements. And so is there any preference towards going through the Snowflake announcements first or the Databricks announcements first? Please vote and put your stuff in the chat.
What am I looking at?
Snowflake. Okay. Well, Vivek says Snowflake, so we get to do Snowflake. This is how it works. So for those of you who are out of the know, but I think most of us are in the know, there are two really large conferences that happen each year. And they are both extreme competitors to each other at this point. So it is Snowflake and it is Databricks, the two largest data platform and warehousing solutions in the data engineering field. And each year they try and up each other by having the battle of the announcements. And so I don't know if I've missed anything here, but generally speaking, I tried to take as many high-level announcements as I could and put them in this spreadsheet for all of us to go through. So some of the things that I think are a good example of sort of the competitive nature between these two is that Snowflake this year announced their acquisition of Crunchy Data, which put them into the Postgres space. And then immediately after, Databricks bought Neon, which is a serverless Postgres solution. So I think that generally speaking, there's some like head-to-head competition here in terms of who will be the ultimate data platform. And I think the general theme of this year too was moving into the agentic space. So let's go through some of these announcements and we can kind of do like deep dives into these as well. I don't think we need to go through all of these. I think some of the really big ones that I saw was that Snowflake and dbt are pretty much coupled together at this point. So dbt has been used to kind of model a lot of Snowflake data for a while, but generally speaking, this was not really something that was like quite official. It was just part of the stack that a lot of people were using as well. I don't know if anybody here is on Snowflake actually. Is it Vivek, are you guys using Snowflake as well or anybody else? Yeah.
Our data warehousing team relies on Snowflake, but they're also slowly starting to figure out how to become more open source. And for now, they're trying to keep as many components open source as possible, so there's no vendor lock-in.
Yeah, yeah. Are you guys using dbt as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm guessing this was not like necessarily that like out there of an idea that this was brought up, but I'm wondering if you guys are also looking into this integration as well that kind of came out.
Not yet. It's on the agenda or rather the roadmap for some point in the future. OpenFlow was also looked at recently, but for now, focus is just on trying to optimize costs and figuring out how to move out of Snowflake into an open source alternative.
Yeah, so this is probably not enhancing the Snowflake experience, but moving out of the Snowflake experience entirely. That's funny. Victor mentioned that dbt seems to be the largest single project in the open source community. I don't know, I don't think that's the case, but dbt is quite widely used. Like I think it's like the #1 single analytics engineering tool for like modern data modeling that we'll see out there. And so part of the reason for this is because dbt kind of like has a lot of like model and data model versioning inherited to it. So as you're modeling the different versions of your like data models, I guess, through your different pipelines, I think that becomes quite harder to track, but it also becomes quite slow to ingest through that pipeline as well. And so this native integration ideally will kind of remove some of that overhead and actually offset it to Snowflake, but also like, I don't know much about Fusion Engine, but it seems like they're trying to make dbt like a first class citizen in this case, which is kind of interesting that the execution would run a little bit faster. If anybody has any thoughts on that, happy to talk about it, but if not, we can move on to the next announcement.
Hard problem for like back to the sort of kind of certification test. So dbt is, yeah, I see, just because of Slack's workspace size, it's probably the largest I've seen. Like if we want to do hands-on certification, dbt being the most popular, most likely we need a hands-on question for dbt. The question is, what about the other tools? Yeah, if you have hands-on, because the Kubernetes can be hands-on because that's the focus. Everything is about Kubernetes. But for DataOps, there's so many different players. How do we decide which one should be the hands-on question?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that creating a DBT question is within our purview. And this is because I see DBT as, again, a analytics engineering and data modeling practice. But fun fact, like I've tried to get a few DBT data ops people within this group and to run some workshops with us, and it might still happen. But generally speaking, one of the things that's really cool is that some folks out there are using tools like Terraform, for instance, or GitOps workflows to manage their DBT models. And I think that's something that's actually really awesome to think about, how they're able to do that within their organizations. And that section is within our purview. And so regardless of whether it's DBT or some other like data modeling language, this is something that like can be directly applied to data ops, in my opinion. And that's sort of the angle that I would want to take with it.
I would go for Terraform only if there's a multi-cloud setup. A simple Kubernetes manifest would do most of the job if you want to go for cluster making. Like it's like getting rid of a mosquito using a bazooka. Like some tools are an overkill in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think this is something that we should create some more of the curriculum first before thinking about the tools that would fit in this use case. I think it's probably the idea, but it is like an uphill battle, and maybe we can make all of those tooling decisions as we're moving
I'm
through.
not talking. I'm not talking about tooling. Look, Terraform is infrastructure as code, right? So Kubernetes works on the app layer, and Terraform does cover the app layer, but it also covers infrastructure as well. So let's take it conceptually as well. Still, the decision would go around. For example, if I want to set up over multiple clouds, obviously I would go or if there is an on-prem cloud as well, then I would take along Terraform. But otherwise, Kubernetes does work just enough. You have app level Docker orchestration or container orchestration. Sorry, I'm removing the tooling and going conceptual. Container orchestration, IAC. So in that sense, that is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
that has diff choices. For example, because of the acquisition, there's a fork of Terraform called OpenTofu. So
OpenTofu.
if we have a hands-on exam, which one should be tested? And I know right now it's almost exactly the same, but going forward, if you have a hands-on exam, will we be Terraform or OpenTofu?
OpenTofu because open source, and I would actually see that which one is going to be more uh, which has more stars in their repository. Like if I want to go, okay, let me
I'm
look at
sure the
that.
one that's being mature is still Terraform. At least the OpenTofu people can claim they are more open because it's a community project. It's not owned by any company.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, but that's the problem. How do we decide if we create a hands-on exam, which tool to test is part of the exam? That's the problem.
Yeah.
No. We discussed it has to be more tool agnostic, but at least you're gonna have one tool as an example, right? Doesn't matter then because the fundamentals would be the same. If you know, for example, how to use a VM in a simple Linux setup, chances are obviously whether you call it a digital ocean droplet or you call an elastic container or something like that, they're all going to work the same. It's just SSH into that and a bash command line. So you get the concept that way. You need to be good at obviously one system, but you can then replicate that with some uh, adjustments. I've particularly worked on Terraform, not on OpenTofu, but since I understand, I understand the concepts. I've worked on Terraform, so all I need to do is just spend some time on OpenTofu, and I'll get there. So that is the whole idea that I'm trying to say.
I think Roseanne wrote from I guess from the foundation perspective, which one will be the choice, I guess.
Like we were doing a Terraform series right in the middle, and then the big thing happened, and then we pivoted to OpenTofu because everyone was so mad about it.
Oh, okay.
And doesn't it belong to the Linux Foundation anyways now? OpenTofu.
Yeah, it was incubated through LF. So
Yeah.
for that reason alone, I think there might be an alignment or push there for us to use OpenTofu if we're doing.
Does it really matter the different certifications when we are talking architecturally, system thinking, and concept and all of that? The tool is just to kind of combine all these concepts somewhere, and then eventually you don't need to worry whether you're on AWS or you're on DigitalOcean or you're on GCP, because the fundamental technology seems to be similar. Or if you work on Proxmox or OpenStack, whatever. So if you have those concepts, you just need to get used to the tooling. Obviously, if I want to set up a router, for example, whether if it is Hawaii or TP-Link, doesn't matter, because they will all be using the same protocols, TCP, IP stack, and SSL and everything. It's just that there would be a difference between the UI, UX, or some configurations. You get there.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I make my point clear.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And as long as we keep the original basis and motivation for how we want to structure things, like the tools, again, they will come and go anyway. So we should be really focused on some of the fundamentals. But also, I think a really interesting question here, and this is something that I think is actually part of the data ops journey, is the evaluation part. Like, yes, we're doing that through the landscape internally, but also teaching people how to evaluate which tools, and actually based off this idea of what their needs are versus just like going overkill on whatever they need or whatever the most popular or most supported tool is that really something that fits their use case, right? This is something that we should be thinking of as a skill.
I you brought a very important point there, Lisa, which is creating a decision framework for new users, for companies, for everybody else to determine what kind of data ops architecture should they utilize and what tooling might fit into
How,
that framework. So if we
how
can,
many DataOps architecture are there, and what are we? Sorry, I did not understand.
my point being, I think where we would be playing an important role is helping people understand how to go about making tooling choices by helping
Oh,
provide.
okay. I
And I
understand. Okay.
and to answer the first question, in terms of data ops architecture, it really depends upon how we are viewing data ops, and I think that's one area we might have consensus on, we might not have consensus on. There can be 2, 3 different answers. I view data ops as an evolution of DevOps, going from simple CI/CD pipelines and Git pipelines and things like that, to being able to build solid data infrastructure layers for other people to consume. That is how my team currently operates. And at very small companies, it can just be one team doing everything. So that is what I was referring to as, depending upon the data ops architecture, it can be something really, really simple where it's a one person team doing everything, or it can be a 5 or 7 member team doing ML operations, AI operations, data operations, and code,
I I
DevOps.
just had an idea. I would like Vivek's point of view on that as well, because I think we had this kind of discussion, but I never brought this up really. How about we provide some architectures, like for a small architecture, these are the components and this is how you build it. For example, you use this tool, and this covers this concept or layer or element. Then there is a tier 2 for medium level, if your data operation involves this and this and all of that. So this is how you would build it. You would add this layer. There would be a minimalistic version, and then there's the full-blown version, which needs to have, platform, GitOps, observability, security, identity access, and blah 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 blah. Full blown.
I think that would be wonderful, and I think that builds very nicely on top of the architecture diagram you helped put together a few weeks ago. So that would act as this all-in-all architecture, and then we can separate out certain components depending upon different qualifying factors to help them pick and choose what might be helpful for them. And to my original point, I think what we're all trying to say is trying to create this framework which will help people understand what is the right tool for their given problem, what would be the right framework to choose.
Yeah, okay. I think that this is actually really something that's quite important. Victor posted the Data Ops Manifesto, and although I agree with most parts of the manifesto, I do think that what's missing is sort of the decision framework and actually understanding some of those decision trees and those things that you would evaluate based off of, not even like in terms of actual tooling, but in terms of what to even assess within a tool and how to assess its interoperability within your entire stack as well. Yeah, Victor?
Yeah, I think that's actually one thing we can probably do. I definitely agree with Dan. I like hands-on. It's just that I'm not sure whether it can be, project neutral. But if when it comes to non-hands-on, just like Kira said, I mean, I definitely agree that framework is very important for data ops strategy. And then the data ops, since we're part of the Linux Foundation, we probably can reach out to all the related projects to see what do they think of the DataOps manifesto, and does the Linux Foundation can create a like open source specific DataOps manifesto?
Yeah, a data ops manifesto from us to me would be in the form of a white paper, which is pretty much like LF's bread and butter sometimes, is to do something like that. And we can, like, if we want to make a decision framework and we want to make it stand out on its own, that's probably the way that I would say to present it, is within a paper, so that we can discuss some of the things that we're going behind too. I think so. One question I have for the group is, do we want to make this another project that we have? Because I think that it's quite important. And I would actually argue to bump something like this up to the forefront of what we do, versus some of our other projects so far. I don't know, do people want to work on this really actively, or? Yeah, Vivek is nodding, so that means that he's in charge now.
I feel like we'll act as lighthouses for a lot
Yeah.
of companies, and even just in general, especially coming from an open source Linux Foundation point of view. I think all the discussions we are having, the idea of a decision framework, and then that tying nicely into that larger architecture diagram, which Dan magically crafted a few weeks ago in that meeting. I think all of these will nicely tie into uh, an actual manifesto, a manifesto from our point of view.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. For the sake of time, I think what I'm gonna do, Vivek, if you're okay with it, is I want to do a separate meeting where we kind of like discuss some of the early stage around this stuff, and then we'll present it to the group for feedback in terms of what they think about it, and we can keep it really POC level. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah, that way we don't feel like we're having to cram everything within the next 10 minutes or so. And I'm really happy to do that. So it's on our Projectscape now. And this is something that we can think about whiteboarding a little bit too, in terms of how we want the framework to look, but also how we want people to interact with the framework as well. And maybe some existing frameworks that are already there. Okay. So I can continue with the conference announcements, but I'm gonna do like a really high level overview just for the sake of completeness. And then we can work on the birds of a feather and workshop discussions, because I think that this is something that's quite important for us. So I think one of the other trends that I saw within the Snowflake Summit was this push to move more data into Snowflake and then out of Snowflake as well. So Snowflake trying to become more interoperable with external warehousing solutions. One of them is, of course, OpenFlow. So Snowflake acquired a company called Datavolo, which are the creators or the original creators of Apache NiFi or NiFi. I don't know how to say it. And they're kind of an ingestion framework, but from what I understand too, and how I personally evaluated it, not many people were actually using NiFi in production from what I kind of saw. So this is one of the things that is a little bit weird to me, but they're actually pushing it quite a bit. So I wonder if they're going to actually revamp development and put a bunch of contributors on NiFi. I think Snowflake's open source strategy has ramped up quite a bit within the last year. Like, I think it's almost completely transformed in terms of which projects they're taking on and what their presence is within the open source community. And one thing that I saw this morning, so this is not part of the conference, but Polaris, which is the open source catalog, the Iceberg West catalog traditionally, now supports Delta Lake, which is Databricks' open table format. So I think this is a really interesting development as well. And then on top of that, definitely seeing more agentic use cases. From what I've talked to other folks about and what their experience has been, Cortex agents are actually pretty performant. Like I think people were quite skeptical of them at first, but from what I've seen, the user experience of Cortex has actually been quite positive. And so I wonder if Snowflake is actually trying to become an AI company, like first and foremost, than anything else in this case, right? A very specific type of AI ML, which is not necessarily facilitating that development, but doing things for you in terms of the data engineering work. So I'd love to open the floor a little bit to any Snowflake discussions around this, or any like skepticism as well, because I think that this is like some pretty interesting direction.
I think they're late to the game by 10 years.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to ask you to elaborate, but I think that it speaks for itself.
We played with a lot of different features which they are trying to push very hard, and most of them are a copy of Jupyter notebooks. Like they have Snowflake notebooks, they're trying to be Databricks but cooler, but they
Mhm.
have those subject matter expertise yet. At least our team, which works with their team, or rather their team working with our team, they're trying to do a lot at the same time, and then it's taking a big hit on the performance and things like that. So we are still encouraging our internal users to use workflows through more standard open source tooling like Jupyter Hub and then other
Yeah.
tools we built out. So
Yeah, I love it. Victor, you have your hand up.
Yeah, simply because maybe I'm biased because Snowflake, the founders, ex-Oracle. In my personal opinion, the reason Snowflake do very well, other than some of the scalability designs that's basically take what Oracle had and make it better, is the fine-grained authentication authorization that's built in. And that's being extended from the data layer into the middle tier layer, if you will. All those are critical in the age of agentic AI because people are talking about fine-grained, context-specific authentication authorization for people who are using the the agent application layers. So this is a part. This is my prediction. And any company who will succeed in the coming age will have to do the similar things for fine-grained authentication authorization in what I call data-driven, AI-driven DataOps.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. This is something that I think has been a large issue in the field, where a lot of the AI ML tooling has had to work backwards when it comes to security, whereas Snowflake kind of came with security, but now has lagged behind some of the innovation that we see, right? And so which one will kind of be more important in the end? I think that we're still kind of figuring that out, but as projects scale towards enterprise level, we're going to see more of that tension arise. Right. Let's go towards the Databricks announcements really quickly. I think we have 8 minutes left in this meeting, so let's let's run through this week-long conference in like 5 minutes if we can, and keep it quick and simple. And so I think one of the biggest moves that I guess Databricks has kind of gone over, and I think this is probably again the move towards Unity Catalog being one of their first class citizens. Like I saw Unity Catalog, at least at that conference, pushed quite a bit. And this is probably because much of that metadata tracking will enable a lot of the other like workflows and agentic developments that probably will interact with your data. Somebody mentioned to me that Databricks is actually not an AI company, it's a data management company. And I think that that's kind of got some merit to it in some ways, and some of the announcements that we've seen as well. So Lakeflow hit general availability, which again, very similar to OpenFlow or or Apache NiFi. And so we'll see what happens there, but it's generally just like bringing data from all of your cloud providers directly into either like Delta Lake or Iceberg format. I'm imagining Delta Lake will still be kind of a first class citizen there. And then also Lakebase as well as part of that. And then the ability to create applications directly on Databricks. I think some of this stuff has been around already, so nothing to me was like really crazy in terms of the announcements for this like latest conference, but also just a lot of agentic developments, just like building agents on top of Databricks. I was looking at some of their reference architectures the other day, and it seems like they do have like some built-in tooling, and Mosaic is kind of reaching a little bit more maturity right now. But yeah, I think that's kind of generally it. I don't know if I've missed anything here that was major, but this is sort of like the general trend that I've seen as well. I don't think anything really crazy happened this year compared to last year, but maybe it's good. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to open up the floor in terms of even just opening the discussion towards what people feel towards where Databricks is headed versus where Snowflake is headed, because I think that there's a convergence that's occurring between these two. And I kind of have my money on Databricks, to be honest. I think that they have a tighter open source strategy and integration, but they're also, I don't know, like there's also a large liability there for cloud providers to take over into their space, to be honest. And so I don't necessarily know what their strategy will be around that.
I think Databricks will be adopted in companies with a lot of money where they have the resources to bring that partner on board and then work it out. But for smaller companies, I think that is where Snowflake will be very helpful, and also just running things native, and be it Google Cloud, be it Microsoft Azure Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
I think the native tooling will provide different companies with more benefits and be it cost, be it performance, all these different things, because everything is happening within the same VPC, everything is happening within the same space. Yes, Databricks can be hosted, self-hosted. We used to do that a few years ago. Cost will be the biggest challenge to smaller companies towards adopting Databricks. And I think most of the companies, smaller companies, will lean towards in-house solutions, or what is it, cloud native solutions instead of Databricks. And I think Databricks, its biggest weakness would be the data warehousing part of it. They're trying to do a lot of cool things, but I don't think they will be able to beat Snowflake. So I think both will continue to provide unique value in different tiers.
Yeah, some of the things that I've seen too is Databricks, at least in Unity Catalog, has started to add in a lot more support for unstructured data management as well. And so I think that's going to be where they beat out Snowflake. Snowflake's just really not meant for that, to be honest. And so they might lose on the traditional data warehousing, but they might win on the unstructured data piece and like sort of that multimodal layer. Whether or not multimodal applies to 99% of data companies out there, data departments, I don't think so, right? I think it's still structured. Is going to be most of the use cases that you see out there, and that's pretty much almost all the data that you'll see used. So yeah, I that's kind of where I like veer on as well.
We used to be on Databricks several years ago, and then their estimate for cost was almost like 300% lower than the actual price we would be hit with the bill. Like they would quote about $500,000, and then the actual bill would be closer to $3 million.
Mhm.
And now there is so much happening, even like within every cloud native offering. For example, AlloyDB, on that,
Mhm.
do everything you are able to do on Snowflake, OLTP, all kinds of operations can be performed. And again, I'm not trying to push for GCP or Amazon, but clouds are starting to provide their own native in-house solutions which can solve multiple use cases. Whether that will replace, at least for us, whether that will replace Snowflake is still a TBD, because the devil is in the details. We haven't really played with AlloyDB at scale. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think they'll continue to exist, and I think they'll become like Confluent Kafka, where if you want to just get up and running quickly, you just go to Confluent, get your servers running, and then eventually at some point you will migrate everything in-house for all the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I did hear that Databricks may eventually one day acquire Confluent, and I don't know how serious that is, but I do think that it is like a very real possibility. So it'll be interesting to see if that transpires or not. This meeting's recorded, but awesome. Well, we're at time. I think that we had a pretty decent discussion today, and I think Birds of a Feather is always interesting because we get to have very like loose, open-ended discussions and do whatever. I'm happy to leave the last note or message to anybody who wants to just shout random things. You're more than welcome to make yourself known, do your plugs if you want to. And what is it? To the YouTubers out there, hit the like subscribe button at the bottom there. Dan wants the popularity, so. All right. Thank you everybody for joining. And yeah, I just let the last minute ride out.
See you all.
Yeah, see you all. Yeah.
Hey, what about that workshop I was supposed to do? You were supposed to tell me
Right.
the
Yes. Do you still want to do
topic.
the workshop? Sorry, I totally forgot that on the meeting minutes. That was not good. Let's go through that right now. Yeah, we want you to still do the workshop. But
On what? The topic was not decided.
yeah, this is kind of the idea, right? I do want to keep it simple, like managing databases on Kubernetes or managing like cloud deployed databases. I think that would be a really good one.
Managing databases using Kubernetes.
Yeah, or deployed on Kubernetes. This is kind of the idea, or one of the things, if you want to get very domain specific, I think people are very interested in deploying something like Spark on Kubernetes and interacting with it, or Airflow on Kubernetes. These are really tough topics sometimes.
If the deployment is the thing, I can easily cover it. If you want me to go to feature set, that would take a long time. How much time am I looking at? Like, what's the length of the workshop?
You can have anywhere from 20 minutes to like an hour and a half. So you can define that like,
Yeah, you
yeah.
want me to cover deployment? I think 20 minutes would be very short, but so I have a half an hour, 30 minutes.
No, you have anywhere between 20 minutes to 1 hour and a half. So there's a really large range that you can have. So you can take an hour if you want to. Yeah.
Okay, let me introduce you to ABCs of me. I can go on all day. You will
Yeah.
have to put a leash on me to, when I was writing my thesis for my master's, and I don't know what the hell am I going to do in PhD. It was 300 pages. A thesis for master's is just 50 pages. I wrote 300 pages. So I need to, my biggest problem is to cut down. It's not to extend it, it's to bring it out. That is why
Okay.
I'm asking you. I'm trying to get the exact scope. Okay, who am I
I'm,
doing this
yeah.
for so that I can actually reduce it because I can go on for the whole day, but I need to force myself to make it, valuable within the time. That is where I struggle a lot actually. So
I'm
I just
going to
need
give
some
you
more.
45 minutes because I think that's a good amount of time.
Okay.
If that works. Yeah.
Thank you for helping me with that.
Yeah.
Okay, who am I talking to and where do I start from? Like,
So you're talking to DevOps engineers.
DevOps.
And so you will have people who understand the basics of Kubernetes, but don't understand why deploying data applications on Kubernetes or using stateful applications, or like what is Spark and what are like these data execution frameworks. They will not know that, in my opinion. Like they will know what Kubernetes is, but they won't know what Spark is and what Spark is used for, and why managing the different versions of Spark sucks ass.
That is why they would allow me to actually, focus on the pain points and directly address that to make it more. I don't want it to be a generic, introduction to Spark and that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
want to target the exact pain point. Okay, what is it that is causing them problems? How can we solve that? That will actually drive the most value out of it.
I also want you to really, if you can, and this is something I think would be really helpful, is Spark is quite mature and Spark is deployed on Kubernetes quite often these days, but it didn't start as being something that was easy to deploy. Like the operator was something that had to be created. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And so if you can find that history of like what it was like to like deploy it back in the day and why Spark needs to be deployed on Kubernetes now and the different solutions that have come up from it, I think that would be really like a good story, because that's the story that a lot of other tools are going to have to go through as well.
Why do we need K-test for Spark and not? That is my favorite stuff to talk about. Even in the company I'm working right now, they're pretty much on monolithic architecture. So I kind of bash them a lot that why you're not containerizing it, why are you not deploying it on Kubernetes? So that discussion, a lot of those points can come here as well. We need to talk about containerization within uh, DataOps as well. Containerization and DataOps. Container, my access is what? Why am I not able to? What just happened? Okay. Sorry. Okay, containerization in DataOps. I think that is something that has been recurring in our discussion. Containerization in DataOps, containerization and uh, orchestration of these containers. So I think that is something we want to start with initially, and then move on to the juice that is Spark. So we're only covering deployment, right? I don't need to talk about why Spark is great and all of that, or do I need to
No,
include that?
no, you don't have to. But you do have to explain who uses Spark and why they use
Okay.
Spark. Yeah.
Who uses Spark? Why do they use it? I'm sticking to Spark, right? Not Airflow.
Yeah. Stick to Spark.
Mm.
And if you have the time for it, I think it would be because one of the things that might be really interesting, and I might ruin you, but talking about the other engines as well, right? Like Flink on Spark or Flink on Kubernetes and things like that, because there's a lot of similar deployment patterns that are there, but each one has its kind of quirks, right? So use Spark as the example, but maybe include mentions of like the Flink Kubernetes operator and like sort of where these things live. And if you see things that are useful to evaluate, then that would be good, because a lot of people do have to do their engine evaluation as well. Like,
I did not get that. What engine evaluation?
just so people are probably going to have to evaluate the engines that they want to use, whether or not it's Flink or whether or not it's Spark, whether or not it's like Trino. And so they're all going to have to be deployed on Kubernetes anyways, if they're an organization at scale. But each one of them probably operates with Kubernetes or works on Kubernetes either similarly or differently, right? And there's probably a very common pattern there. So if you take Spark as the most mature solution or the most mature technology in terms of Kubernetes support, how can you tell that story and make it applicable also for others who want to deploy other engines too?
Okay, here's what I want to ask. I'll show you something. I'll show you my screen.
Yeah.
So this is a project I'm working on. I really genuinely do not understand what's really difficult about this and why I want to go, why people want to go around, K-test for this or K-test for that. Okay, that would be consultation project, but okay,
Yeah.
I'll cover one thing. I'll show you something. Look, this is a Django project that I'm working on right now. It's a whole microservice that I am solely managing for Syllabi. I'm the only one who's managing that. Okay. What is Kubernetes deployment in that? I have set up a cluster in DigitalOcean, which you can see here. Okay. Why does it have to log out every? Just give me a moment.
Yeah.
It's not nothing big. I don't know why people, because if I can take this understanding, I might want to motivate people to start using Linux and train their team on Linux. So look, I simply deploy a cluster here.
Mhm.
I got the configuration. Now, no matter what app am I connecting and all of that, this is all I need, a config file. That's it. Second thing, all I need to do is to set up a bunch of YAMLs. Okay. In the days, in our early days, are you? I'm sorry if it is appropriate to ask your age, but how old are you?
I'm 30.
Okay, I'm 2 years older. So back in the days, so you have worked in the days when there was no AI and you had to write all of this bunch yourself. You remember those times, right?
Hmm.
YAML files and everything. Now, I want to take this to a new concept. That is what I'm sharing with you. It
Hmm.
took me literally 15 minutes to set up these YAML files, get the configuration straight, and deploy it on Kubernetes. It was that simple. Once my app was ready,
Yeah.
okay, uh, it's 60% vibe coded. I don't like the term vibe coded. I actually tell a lot of what to do in my AI, and since I've been trained by people who wrote the Linux kernel, so they are very touchy with directory structure and all of that and documentation. So I use
Mhm.
it in a very non-traditional way, a
Yeah.
traditionally non-traditional way, like very traditional because I've been trained by Linux guys. But yeah, so what I want to give in that workshop is that, dude, you do not these although these looks these all of these YAML files, they look very overwhelming. Oh my god, I'm gonna have, but you do not have to do that.
Hmm.
You give you just give it to your AI and it's gonna set it up for you. You give it to your IDE, Windsurf, Z, or if you're using Cursor, whatever, it
Hmm.
sets it up for you. And the whole DevOps pipeline that used to be a 2-3 day job, now I've actually literally deployed it in 20 minutes. So if I cover what I want to do within those 45 minutes, I covered the basics. How does Kubernetes work and all of that? How does the directory structure look like if you want to make something? How do you write the manifest and all of that? And how do you deploy it? Now there are two things: either uh, you deploy it yourself, and then cloud services have their managed services as well. So right
Hmm.
now, for example, I'm using a managed database with this. Okay, there's worker pools and everything, blah 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 blah. I think there is somewhere over here. I'm actually using a managed database with it. I think it's somewhere here. Yeah. So there's the VPC connected. Yeah, I'm using a managed database with this. So now that becomes a decision that would you want a managed Spark, uh, as a managed service. I don't think that it is available on DigitalOcean, but I might need to look it up. So,
Hmm.
or you want to set it up yourself to have more control with it. So it's control versus how much time to deployment. Okay, so you want a quick deployment, you want to go for a managed service. You want more control, you want to do it yourself. You want more control, you got to know how to set up these YAML files. I would tell the structure, but it's no big deal to set this up now that you have AI in your support. So that kind of covers a lot of aspect like AI integrated data operations pipeline setup. You get what I'm trying to say. Would
Yeah.
this make sense?
Yeah, the stand-up is really easy. And I think that that's a good starting point to go by, right? Like, I think everything that you've said makes sense. Let me think about this a little bit more, though. Because I think what you said just now does do a really good workshop. Do you want it to have hands-on components? Do you want me to tell you if it should have hands-on components or?
I can do this, but my problem often comes in that I tend to geek out so much. I tend to go in totally different directions. So
Mhm.
that is why I tend to keep myself very strict to the scope. You add to the scope, I can do it. Should I
Yeah.
do it or not? That is what I'm asking you. I don't know the audience. You know it better. I
Yeah.
want to give them value in that sense that they should not get bored. Okay, another theoretical lecture, or oh my God, it's talking all programming. I don't want to do
Mhm.
that stuff. So there are two types of people. I've done a fair share of teaching in the past 2 years. So this is what my experience is coming up. So I don't know who are actually what kind of companies there are in, and I
Mhm.
want to make this something that has actual value in it,
Yeah.
um, on their pain points. So the word Kubernetes, oh my God, I have to set this up. Oh, Dockers, oh, it's nothing. What is Dockers? I think my screen is still sharing, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what Dockers is. Simple. In terms of hands-on side. जी बेटा क्या हुआ?
Mhm.
कैसे? Okay, मैं कर दूँ. It's simple this. Docker file and Docker Compose. That's it. Back in the days when you and I were a lot younger, we used to write it ourselves, each service, command, volumes, which volume to mount, environment, and everything. Now you have AI to do it for yourself. So whether it is Apache Spark, I'm going to use Spark as an example, but I'm also going to tell them that, dude, whatever tool you use, if you understand basics of these things, working with
Mhm.
a Unix environment and all of that, this shouldn't be a problem. And any tool can be set up on Docker and Kubernetes because Kubernetes provides, I think, universal APIs and everything. So
Yeah.
you have you can go along in any platform. You have these YAML files set up. I don't care if it is DigitalOcean or GCP or AWS. It goes anywhere, but the fundamentals are there. That is what I'm foreseeing. I'm trying to the vision with the certification path is this, that if people are able to get that sense, uh, they will be tool agnostic. They just need to play around with the tool, and since they know how DataOps pipeline works and all of that, they won't have problem with that. So this is the whole idea that I'm trying to get along with.
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
have
gonna
problem with that.
paste a really like high level overview of like what some of the topics could be and sort of like the flow, right? And you're welcome to add on this and like any ideas that you have. If it fits within this framework or can be like a sub part of this, I think that works. But this can be your general overview.
Got it. So
Yeah.
what kind of guys would you be calling in this, or is it like open stuff? I've never done this before. That's why I'm asking too many questions around that.
Yeah. You mean like what kind of like tools or what kind of
The guy, who am I? I'm more concerned about the audience who would be in that
yeah.
workshop, or is it like an open-ended YouTube video I'm going to record and people can see it later on? How are we going about this? That is what I'm trying to ask.
It's going to be like a live workshop, but it's going on YouTube. And generally, I would say that stick to the DevOps engineers and really like go over some of the basics around the data engineer. So assume that they don't know anything about data engineering, right? And the idea here is that the data infrastructure team will recognize that they need to use Spark to run all their jobs. And but they don't want to be in charge of managing Spark, and so they want an internal platform team that actually manages the Kubernetes clusters to then take over the management of Spark. And so they have to now go in and go, okay, what even is Spark?
Okay, okay. So DevOps guys who will be working with data engineers. So that, yeah,
Yeah,
I can take it from that end. So I'll have to cover Spark and then I can jump into the deployment side of things. Yeah, I can do that. And data engineers can actually understand the importance of setting it up on Kubernetes side and why it is important. At least if you should know enough as a data engineer what to demand from your
mhm,
DevOps guys. The problem often I find is that people have these high demands, but since they don't know how things work, those demands are very unrealistic.
yeah,
So yeah, well, this would actually give them enough understanding so that they would know what to expect from the DevOps team. Yeah,
yeah.
I can go around that. I can go around that definitely.
I'm also going to give you another talk. You can watch this if it's interesting to you. I really enjoyed it. I watched this live. So it was one of the architects I knew from Roku's team who talked about their internal deployment of Kubernetes. I think it's too complex for the stuff that you'll be covering, but it might be interesting. The timestamp is right there, so you could just start. And it's only a 20-minute talk, so but it
I'll
might be,
definitely
yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into this. Obviously, for this would definitely help me in my research. So I've been watching too much, uh, you know, Pokemon with my son all day. This is good to have this.
It's okay. I've been yeah, but between you and me, I might be doing some more interesting things. So I'm hoping to take a few weeks break and actually play some video games. We'll see though. We'll see. No promises, but I'm really excited at the prospect.
My friend just gifted me the Middle Earth Saga, so I need to look into that. Actually, I'm relocating to Spain, so I'm just waiting on my visa. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of hanging in the middle. Right now, I'm at my brother-in-law's house. He's getting married and all that. So
Yeah.
that is why this is not my usual setup. You remember my system otherwise. So once I actually settle within these 2 weeks, I'll be actually there. So once I get there and I settle up, I've already even booked the area, so I know where I'm going to shift. So it's not going to take me much time to set up my apartment and everything. So once I get that, so I'll be ready by the last week of August. I'm good to go with last week of August. And
Okay.
good thing is that in August, although I'm starting my PhD and all that, but the professors they'll definitely come in September, and that is when I get busy. August, I'm pretty much free once I get there. I just need a week to settle. So, like after 15 to 30 August, that would be the range I would be giving the date. Just keep that in mind.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm excited, and I'm excited to attend the
Awesome.
workshop. It seems like a good time. If you need to delay it by a couple weeks, that's okay too. We're pretty flexible, but end of August is a good time and to get things ready.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to be clear so that you know where I'm coming from, and you can then adjust things as per your schedule, and let me know what else is needed. And yeah, it would be an awesome opportunity. I'm truly honored.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. This is a really big one. So in my data ops talk, I do talk about some of this stuff, and it's always the stuff that people are very interested in is actually like deploying Spark and Airflow at scale. So this is something that's really interesting to folks. I imagine that you'll get a good amount of interest in it. No pressure, but
I can take it. Don't worry.
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I'll make you. I'll make you proud. I'll make you proud.
Oh, you already have, Dan. But enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully things go well for you.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank you so
right,
much.
bye.
Take care. Bye.